Hello and welcome to Glendale Community College's Speaker Series. We are so excited to have you joining us live from home or your office, wherever you're tuning in. My name is Isel Silva and I'm the Director of Career Services here at GCC. Today we are looking forward to talking with our final speaker of the spring 2021 semester. Of course, our goal is always to get different perspectives from industry leaders to share their leadership experience and transformation. So before we get started, for our audience members watching, please feel free to add your questions in the comment section, and we will be sure to monitor those and ask those questions to our speaker before we close or wrap up our time. So to kick it off, I'm going to go ahead and ask Lindsay Walker, my colleague who works with me in Career Services, to introduce today's guest speaker.
Great, I'd be happy to. So Dr. Robert Keller is an associate professor of practice at Northern Arizona University in the Center for Materials, Interfaces, and Research Applications, also known as META, Biological Sciences and Mechanical Engineering. He serves as the Chief Science Officer for, can you pronounce that for me, Dr. Keller?
Axolotl Biologics.
Thank you, Axolotl Biologics, and the Chief Technology Officer at New Laston. He has over 20 years of experience in the development and regulatory approval of medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and biologics, including cell-based products and regenerative medicine and tissue-engineered technology. He has 146 scientific abstracts, 40 peer-reviewed publications, and 6 issued U.S. patents. He received his PhD from the University of Arizona in 2001. Dr. Keller currently serves as the Scientific Advisory Board for Leonhardt Ventures and the Clinical Advisory Board for Aesthetics Biomedical. He serves as an advisory board member for Protein Genomics, a protein polymer medical device company, and the California Stock Exchange. Dr. Keller has helped to co-found a number of companies, including Development Engineering Sciences, a biomedical consulting firm, Flagship Biosciences, a digital pathology company, and Elevated Manufacturing, a contract manufacturer. Dr. Keller's previous roles include past president of the Services and Biomaterials Foundation, VP of Research and Development at Histogen in San Diego, California, product specialist at W.L. Gore and Associates in Flagstaff, and lead scientist and project manager at Advanced Tissue Sciences in La Jolla, California. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Keller. You have so many accolades, and we're looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I hope others enjoy what it is that we're going to talk about.
Awesome. So what we like to do with our guests is just a quick break, like icebreaker, and we like to just ask some quick rapid fire questions. So if you're open to that, not necessarily related to leadership, but just questions to get to know you, our guest speaker. So if you could, our first rapid fire question is, and you kind of shared with us before we actually started that you did a lot of traveling. So what is your favorite travel destination?
Ooh, I did a lot of traveling for work, and we've done a reasonable amount of traveling for fun, for pleasure, but I would say my wife and I love the Caribbean. She likes warm water, blue-green water is beautiful, and I think island life is spectacular. So I would say pretty much anywhere around the Caribbean. We've done the west portion, the southwest portion, or the west portion, southwest portion, as well as the east. And we haven't had a location that we didn't like. So I'd have to go with the Caribbean.
Awesome. Great answer. I mean, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's going to argue with me on that one, right?
I mean, I can't. So let's see here. What is your favorite food or restaurant?
So hands down, my favorite food is Korean food. So my mother was Korean, and every time I have Korean food, it reminds me of her. And we ate it a lot when I was growing up. So hands down, Korean food is my favorite food.
Is there like a specific place that you feel like sells really good Korean food?
My kitchen is a really good place, but there's some good restaurants. In fact, there's 2 Korean restaurants here in Flagstaff, and there's quite a few options in the valley. And my favorite, if you're a meat eater, my favorite Korean dish is this marinated barbecue meat. And it's called bulgogi, and it's very thinly sliced beef, and it's marinated in this sauce that's kind of a sweet and tangy sauce. It's very unique, very memorable, but over rice and with a little bit of garnish, it's fantastic. So that's my favorite Korean dish.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to have to make sure to eat right after this. Let's see here. Which leader do you admire the most?
Which leader do I admire the
Do you have a
most?
leader that you admire the most?
Well, so I recently read this book, and it's a rather old leader, but I actually admire him, and it's Barry Goldwater. I wasn't very old when I was actually very young when he was still alive, but in reading some of his old publications, I think I'd have to say that I probably embrace a lot of the leadership values that Barry Goldwater propagated. And this text was written back in the 60s. So yeah, I'd have to mention Barry Goldwater.
Awesome. I mean, a great staple in regards to leadership, right?
Absolutely. And you know, sort of a huge name in Arizona as well.
Oh, definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
I know even within our leadership that we undergo within the district, we definitely hear the name pretty often. Let's see here. What is one positive thing that you do for yourself, like on a daily or weekly or monthly basis?
So I like to exercise, and I'm pretty religious about it. So I think I feel better. I think better. I think it eliminates stress in very positive ways. So I would say exercise is something that I've always been very passionate about. I was an exercise science major in college and at the University of Arizona. And yeah, I mean, exercise is a lifestyle, and it's something, you know, I think if you think about it with respect to, you know, hey, I want to lose weight, or I'm making a goal, or it doesn't really stick. But if it becomes a lifestyle, and it sticks and it stays with you. And there's just so many different ways that you can exercise. Mm-hmm. So, you know, obviously the classic, you can go to the gym, but I also really enjoy the outdoors. So I'm pretty into mountain biking and snowboarding, and even trying to snowboard uphill. So those are my passions. And yeah, those are things that I do fairly regularly. Actually, right now, it's snow flurries here in Flagstaff. Wow. And our mountain is still open, so Thursday morning, that's where I will be.
Nice.
They're not open until Thursday. Right now, they're only open Thursday through Sunday, so I got to hit it on Thursday.
There you go. Our last question, fill in the blank. In one word, leadership is?
In one word, leadership is mentorship.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering those series of questions. Again,
did I pass, or did I get? When do I get my grade?
I think you did well. Yes, I think you did well.
Okay. Did I get an A? That's what the students always want to know. Did I get an A?
Yeah, you aced it. Right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our actual questions. So we gave a little bit of we provided a little bit of your bio, right? But if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got to your current position.
Okay. Well, so I guess about myself. So I'm married. I'm a husband and a father of 4. I was born in the Midwest, but I grew up in the Valley. I grew up in Glendale, Arizona. I went to Horizon Elementary School and then to Apollo High School. I actually took 2 classes at Glendale Community College. They were in summer school, and you know, just to try to get ahead and some of those prereqs out of the way. But then I went to the University of Arizona for college, and I stayed there for my college experience as well as graduate school. So I did my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD at the U of A. And I'm a physiologist and biomedical engineer by training. That's sort of my formal education. And then I went into industry. My first job was in La Jolla, California, and we moved from Tucson to La Jolla. Very different scenery, and that's where our first daughter was born, and she's now 18. So that gives you a sense of how old I am. I was in what they call Biotech Beach. That's Southern California. I was there for a number of years, and then we moved from Southern California back to Arizona, and we moved to Flagstaff, Arizona. So, and I came to work for a company here in Flagstaff. So out of grad school, I went into industry, and then I was in industry for about 10 years post grad school. And then I really missed the classroom. So I decided to do some consulting work and get back into the classroom and teach part-time. And then the part-time thing turned into full-time, and now I'm an associate professor at NAU, and I don't just teach, I have a research lab and graduate students and undergraduate students that I mentor in research. And then I stayed active on the corporate side. Much of that was spinning out technology. What that means is licensing out or patenting certain types of ideas and commercializing them, turning them into products. And so today, present day, my oldest is 18. So I have an 18, a 17-year-old, a 15, and a 12. And they're all girls. My life is run by women, and I'm totally okay with it. It works out really well. I'm well taken care of. I've given lots of instructions, and I like to believe that I follow instruction pretty well most of the time. So that's my personal life. And then you heard about, recreational stuff. And I have kind of one foot in academia and one foot in industry with respect to work. And it's a little schizophrenic, but, I'm kind of a high energy person, and I get bored really easily. So, when industry annoys you, I can focus on the academics. And when I'm done with academics for the day, I can focus over on the industry. So it's kind of nice to have the blend.
Yeah, totally. So one thing that we like to ask all of our interviewees, we're talking about this transformational journey from college to leadership. And so there were so many accolades I didn't even read off of your bio, and it's so impressive. And so what I would love to hear from you is, how do you define success? You've been in the industry and in the field for so long. So how would you define success in your shoes?
That's a great question, and I think it's going to be a different answer for every person. To be totally honest, I think success is going to be determined about what's important to you, and I think you have to be honest with yourself about what you value and what you value the most. And so I think looking at what I've done in my career, I think it's easy to say, it always looks good when it's on a piece of paper. But let me tell you this. So that first company in Southern California that I went to work for, the reason we moved to Flagstaff is they filed for bankruptcy. So that doesn't make it on the CV, right? It just says, oh, he was in Southern California, he did all these great things, and then he moved to Flagstaff and he did all these. Well, the reason we moved to Flagstaff is because the company went out of business. So was that a success? Well, if you define it by how the company performed, no. It wasn't my company. I was a bench scientist. I had all these supervisors. Everybody else was making the decisions. I mean, I was 26 years old. None of the decisions were up to me, but the company went out of business. So that wasn't a success. But what was a success is we kind of made the decision. My wife and I made the decision, well, I think we want to come back to Arizona. Arizona's home. We had kids now. We wanted to be closer to family. And so, we could have stayed in Southern California, but we made those personal decisions to move back to Arizona. So, I bring up that anecdote because I think it's easy to look at kind of what I've done in my career and say, oh, well, success to him is going to be easy to say, answer because look at all the great things, but you don't see the in-between. You don't see the failures. There were a lot of failures. And I think being true to what our values were, or what was important to my wife and I, was really important. And family was really important. So in most of those choices throughout my career, the success was how are we going to make sure that, things happen well at home. And that's always been, kind of our guiding light. So I talked in the story about when I left the position here in Flagstaff at W.L. Gore. Well, I was traveling a ton, like for work. I was gone 50, 60% of the month. And actually Lindsay and I knew each other back then. She knew the family and she knew exactly what that looked like. And so there was sort of some eye-opening conversations that my wife and I had. And, it was, hey, I think a change is a good idea. And so that was really the impetus to move out of that role and, get into something where I was going to be more in charge of my pathway or my schedule and not have to be on the road all the time. So, consulting and having a home office and then eventually having a lab and, people that work for the business and then teaching part-time. Those happened because we decided to make a shift. So, when you look at somebody's like career path, asking the questions of the in-between story will tell, I think, a lot of the details of what's important to people and why they make the decisions that they made. So for me, long-winded answer, but I think in a nutshell, success is something that an individual has to determine. And you might measure success by the amount of money you make. You might measure success by the type of career, the title that you have. You might measure success by, having a family, raising a family, having kids, going on vacations, having a lot of free time. And, it's difficult for us to, I think, judge other people's success. And there's certain metrics that the world kind of, says, oh, this is a successful person, this is an unsuccessful person. And honestly, I think, for me, I would say, try to kind of buck all that system and just find out what's important to you and what's going to be valuable to you in the long run and go for it. And I think you'll, at the end of your career or in mid-career, you'll probably say, yeah, I think that I'm successful because I'm doing the kinds of things that I want to do. I'm working in the type of, role that I want to work in, and my home life is the way I want my home life to be. And I'm happy, I'm content. And it might be different for the next person, and that's okay. So, I don't love telling students like, hey, to be successful, this is what it needs to look like, because their choices are going to be very different than my choices. Right. And that's okay. What makes us unique, that's what makes us individuals. And I think sometimes it's a little dangerous where a lot of, institutions of higher learning say, hey, here is what a successful woman looks like, or here's what a successful man looks like. And many of those types of things are kind of all in the eyes of the beholder. So that's how I'd answer that question. Maybe it's not a popular answer, but that's how I feel.
I think it's great. And I'm kind of hearing as well, as your career journey took you from place to place, your definition of success changed as well. So it kind of evolved as you evolved as a person as well.
It did. It very much did. I mean, so for example, when the university in 2015 asked me to set up a lab on campus, and that's when I took on this new role of associate professor of practice, because up until that point, my research labs were all off campus. They were private laboratories, and they still exist. But the university said, hey, we want you to create an academic lab and have an academic presence, not just teaching, but we want you to do research on campus. I said, okay, I'll do that. Well, there were certain requirements that the university expects. I can't just tell the university, well, that's great, I'll do that, but I only want to work 2 hours a day. You're not going to meet the requirements of the role. So sometimes you have to alter, for a season, what your definition of success and what your goals are going to look like, so that you can be successful in the new thing that you've said yes to. And so there was a big growth period where I had to lean into this new role for a number of years so that, the university was happy and they were satisfied with, me in that position. And so, that's the other balancing act of it too. It's not just this license to say, oh, well, I'm going to be my own boss and nobody can tell me what to do. Well, the real world doesn't work exactly like that. I mean, you have to have, I think, what's valuable to you and what's important to you, but you have to balance that with, what your supervisors want out of you. And that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. I mean, that's always kind of the balancing act that we have to play as professionals, right? And no matter what you do.
Definitely. Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that, because one of the reasons why we wanted to do a series like this is to show students that leadership isn't always linear, right? Everybody's experiences are definitely different, and everybody overcomes different challenges and obstacles. And you kind of alluded to some obstacles maybe that you've had to overcome, but as a leader, nothing is ever going to go our way, right? Like it's not always going to be unicorns and rainbows. We're going to come across obstacles and challenges. So for you, like, what have been some barriers that you've had to overcome, and how have you been able to overcome them in your career?
So for me, I think, these like transition points or these challenges, having a support network has been really important, not being an island. And, my wife has been there with me every step of the way, even the family, the kids, and my support network extends to the family, friends that we have, members in the community. So I think it's hard to exist all by yourself. And I think we were made for community. I think we were designed to be with people. And so making sure that we have a support network is really important. I think it's more than ever, it's underscored during this season where we're, coming on the back edge, hopefully, right? The back edge of this pandemic. A lot of people, I think, have discovered that, we're built for community. We're supposed to be with each other. And, these video conferences that we've gotten so good at and accustomed to. And, you guys don't know if I'm actually wearing shorts or dress shoes right? I'm just not going to stand up. I mean, we all know the drill, right? I put a dress shirt on and you look really put together, but we're built for community. We've gotten so used to this, distance. It used to be called social distancing, and now we've gotten rid of the word social. Now it's physical distancing, right? And so I think humans are built for community. So for me, my community has helped me through the rough spots. And I think, all of us need to have just a strong community that are like-minded, but also ones that are going to challenge you into alternative ways of thinking if maybe you're going down the wrong path, right? Because sometimes things happen and they're an eye-opener and you're not thinking about things correctly, or at least that's what's happened to me, right? And sometimes I have to have eye-openers to say, hey, that's not the way to be thinking about it.
Well, at the beginning, when we were doing the rapid fire, we asked you the question leadership is, and you said mentorship, and you've kind of alluded to how important that is with support. And so I wanted to ask you, why should our students seek mentorship?
So I think mentorship it's a two-way road, right? So I've had phenomenal mentorship in my journey. And that was one of the reasons that I felt passionate about getting back in the classroom. So I've had, mentors in college, my professors. Dr. Leslie Tolbert was the first scientist that I worked for. And at the University of Arizona as undergrad, I worked on the Manduca sexta. That's a tobacco hornworm. And I did research for her, and she mentored me, took me under her wing. I was away from home, and I owe so much of my career to her. And then in graduate school, I had Dr. Stuart Williams. He was my PhD advisor. And again, I learned so much about industry and academia and the balance from Dr. Williams. And then every company that I've been in or been affiliated with, there have been mentors that have guided me, taken me under their wings and said, hey, this is how this works, or this is how you could be thinking about this. As a scientist trying to learn business, there were a lot of business mentors along the way. So I wouldn't have been able to achieve the things that I've achieved if people didn't invest in me. And it's not on my own ability. I had to do the hard work, but there were people that actually poured into me and invested in me. And that's exactly what's happening to your students. They're having faculty and staff that are investing in them. And they need to embrace those opportunities. And guess what? At some point in the future, the table is going to switch. It is kind of a weird thing, right? The black hair goes gray, right? And then it kind of starts falling out, and you can't stand up as straight, and you can't run as fast or hike as quickly, pedal the bike so quickly, or get up the hill as fast. But the mind is still there, and now you start realizing, hey, the reason that I'm where I'm at is because people took the time to invest in me. And a way to say thank you is to become a mentor or become a leader and invest in the next generation. So there's a saying that I love to propagate, and it's every ideology is only one generation away from extinction. And so it's our job to train the next leaders. Otherwise, there won't be any. And so, for the students that are listening, there are people that are hungry to invest in you because they see potential. So embrace it. And you're going to have your turn. And we're going to all expect that you'll return the favor. And that's how this whole thing works. That's the beauty of living in community and investing in each other. Right? So I hope that answers the question in a way that makes people think.
Yeah. I hope so, right? Because I think oftentimes mentorship happens both formally and informally. And so sometimes we may not realize that mentorship experience is actually happening until, times have passed and you're really like, oh, wow, that person really did serve as a mentor for me. So I think I'm glad you share that message, because I think it's a good opportunity for our students to kind of look around them and lean in and embrace those opportunities, right? If they are able to work really well with, maybe it's a faculty member or somebody else, lean into it and see how that mentorship experience can kind of help build themselves up. One of the other questions that we wanted to ask was, what does it mean to be a leader? I think everybody kind of has different ideas of what a leader means. For me, a leader can happen no matter your title, right, or your position. But to you, like, what does it mean to be a leader?
So I think being a leader is putting others before yourself. Thinking about either other ideologies or other people, maybe first. And maybe secondly, you're thinking about yourself. It's not saying that, you have to, be so sacrificial that you're not taking care of yourself, but you're truly looking out for other people's best interests. And if our leaders did that all the time, we would see less complaining, I think, about leadership, where it wasn't a selfish type of thing. It was truly looking out for the best interests of the collective. So there's a terminology that came from one of the companies that I worked at, one of the first companies I worked at here in Flagstaff. So some of the viewers that watch this that are here in Flag will know exactly where this comes from. I'm not going to say the name of the company. But this tagline is leadership is determined by followership. And so, like, if you look at somebody and you think that they're a leader, if you kind of watch their life, and if there are people that are kind of following in their footsteps or doing the things that they do, then they probably are a leader. But if you think you're leading and you turn around and there's nobody really following you, you're not really a leader. So those leaders that people are going to follow are typically because people see something in them that they can believe in, and that usually means that they're thinking about their best interests, and so they're willing to follow that leader. And we think of a lot of the great leaders in culture and in society, and they have a followership. There are people that actually identify them as being a leader, and many of those leaders have sacrificial characteristics. They're thinking about the people that they lead almost more than themselves all the time, So in my world, in my mind, I feel like, that's an important aspect of a leader. It's not the only one, but I think it's an important aspect of being a leader is thinking about the people that you're leading.
This kind of ties right into that. And you mentioned before the importance of needing to mentor, to bring up the next generation of leaders. What do you think are the keys for developing that next generation of leaders? What are the main components that you think will really shape good leadership in the future?
Well, I think that sacrificial component is important. I think in our society, I mean, if you spend a lot of energy looking at advertisements, right, it's all about me, right? What is this product going to do for me? What have you done for me lately? I mean, how is this going to help me? So I think that's a little self-destructive for our society, and I think the future leaders in our culture, if they can embrace this concept of putting others before them or being a little bit more sacrificial, it's going to go a long way. Critical thinking. I think critical thinking is really important. Being able to ask questions, but doing it in a respectful way. I mean, I'm not saying challenge the leadership disrespectfully, but I think it's okay to say, hey, well, why is that? Why do we do it that way? Why do we think that? And we see a lot of good examples of that, but we also see poor examples of that, right? And so I think these are the types of leaders that are going to be helpful in moving society forward. And characteristics that I really like to try to foster in my classrooms as well in my laboratory, because those are the future leaders that are going to replace me and my colleagues in the future.
And so, as somebody that has transitioned right from, you went to U of A, correct? So you did your undergrad, master's, doctorate degree at U of A, and you made that transition. Like, what are, and you had mentioned like critical thinking, but when you transition from college or education into, you said you went into the industry first, right? Like,
right.
How was that transition for you? And what are ways that you think some of our students can, when they're making the transition from education maybe into the workforce, what are some things that you might recommend to our students to help them maybe gain some of those skills that you were mentioning?
Hang out with old people. So I'm serious. I tell my students, like, when you move from college or an academic setting, you go get a job, your boss is probably going to be older than you. They're going to be a generation, maybe 2 generations above you. And so there are generational differences. There's no question about that, right? And I'm not trying to pass judgment on this generation has better thinking than that generation. Well, let's just agree that generations think differently because they lived through different phases of time. Their challenges were different. They were unique. So recognizing and understanding that, when students come out of school and you go to work, your boss is going to be in a different generation than you. They're going to probably be like me. They're old. They use business cards. They struggle with email. Okay, they can't get their computer to do certain things. I actually don't struggle with email, but you understand what I'm talking about. So paying attention to that and trying to understand, like seeing the perspective from their lenses is really important. It's the same thing that I try to tell my colleagues that are in my same generation is we also have to think through, the new hires that we have a different way of thinking about things. They're in a different generation. And so we got to put on those spectacles and view the problem or the issue or the circumstance through their frame of reference. And if all of us do a little bit more of that, where we're trying to think about the other person's perspective, it's going to end up so much better. It really is. So here's an example. There's a car accident happens at an intersection, and there's a person on every corner, right? So 4 different individuals that witnessed the car accident. The police officer comes to each individual to document, write down what happened, right? And you get 4 different accounts of the exact same car accident. That's who we are as humans. We all have our different perspectives. The blue car hit the yellow car. No, the yellow car hit the blue car, right? So the light was red. No, the light was yellow. No, it was green. So, just understand that everyone's got their own perspective. And so the one thing that I would challenge, our viewers that are in college, they're at the community college or in the university setting, they're they've already transitioned to a 4-year. When you go out into the workplace, just understand that your perspective inevitably is going to be unique. It's going to be probably different than your supervisor. And hopefully they're going to know that. And you might have to educate them like, hey, I just have a different perspective. I value your perspective. I'm trying to understand why you see this problem the way you see it. And I might see it a little differently. But if we can embrace those differences and we have like a diversity in looking at a problem, we will get better outcomes, I promise. Because when we get unique ways of looking at the same issue, we'll end up with a better result. And so, it's a way for us to, I think, recognize that there are going to be generational differences and try to encourage the dialogue so that we come out with a positive outcome.
Yeah, I love that. I actually just listened to a webinar not too long ago about generational differences and how the perspectives really have to be acknowledged in a workplace or any place, really. And the speaker himself said he has a mentor that's younger than him to teach him kind of what the newest generation, how they function. I thought that was fascinating.
I try hard to hang out with young people.
Right?
I'm not that hip, but I'm trying to learn all the lingo, But it's true. It's true. You have sometimes, you could equate it to like, at some level, it's like a foreign language, So like, for example, when I said I was traveling a lot, I did a lot of international travel. And there were times where I'd have to have an interpreter. Actually, my favorite trip, I had a distributor that was selling these medical device products in Korea. And I started off by talking about Korean food. So I am half Korean, but I speak very little Korean. And just enough to know that they're speaking Korean, and I can probably ask for some food, ask where the bathroom is, ask for a beer, like just about anybody can in most languages. And so I actually had the opportunity to take an interpreter, and I took my mom. My mom and I went on a business trip to Korea, and she was my interpreter. And she was so nervous. She said, I don't know how to interpret like for business negotiations. I said, that's okay. That's okay. I'll do the business negotiation. You just have to actually translate the words over. But in generational conversations, sometimes it's like that. It's almost like there's different languages. And you have to recognize that, there might be two different words for the same thing. And so if we recognize that and we think more like an international community, and we think like, hey, when you go international, you go into another country, you don't just force America on that culture. You try to be respectful about the place that you're going. When I went to Korea, I wanted to make sure I took my mom and I wanted her to educate me as much on what do I need to be doing with my body language, right? When do I need to bow, for example? And when do I, there's this little thing when you receive a business card. Let me find a business card here so I can show you. When you receive a business card in Korea, there's this this way that you're supposed to receive it that is respectful. And so you don't just hand a business card to somebody, right? You actually present it with two hands, or if it's one hand, you actually put this hand here and you present it like, so it's just this little gesture, which it's just rude to do the American thing like, well, here you go, right? Or you just, hand it to them. So those little nuances, like when you have an interpreter that understands the culture, are really important. It's the same thing with generational differences. Like we just need to learn kind of how each other tick. And I think we'll get along a whole lot better.
Yeah, I really like that. I wanted to remind the viewers we have about 5 minutes left. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment box and we'll get to them. I will continue just to keep the conversation going. And you did mention some wisdom for students and hang out with old people. Is there any other bits of wisdom that you can share with our students who are completing their degree, maybe this term, maybe over the summer or, end of fall, and embarking on their leadership journey? Any wisdom that you can share with them as they kind of go out into the world?
Yeah, be bold and ask for opportunities, right? So the worst that they can say is no. Like ask for the internship, ask if they're hiring, ask if you can shadow, ask if you can, take them to lunch and just talk about what they do or what their industry is like. It shows that you're motivated. It shows work ethic. They're going to know if you're smart because they can see your grades. Okay, they're going to see your CV. What you cannot demonstrate unless you spend time with somebody is your work ethic, if you really want it. And so, you got to do it in, I think, a diplomatic way. You can't be pushy. But the worst they can say is, no, I'm sorry, I don't have the time. And don't take it personal. I mean, that's how the world is. You're going to get a lot of closed doors. You're going to get a lot of people telling you no. You're going to get a lot of companies going bankrupt, and then you got to go do something else. And if you think it's all going to be rainbows and unicorns, like we heard earlier, you're going to be very disappointed. So develop a little thick skin early and go ahead and be bold and ask for those opportunities. And don't worry if they say no. That is, it's just a short little word and move on.
I love that. I feel like you're speaking kind of like our language and our talk, because oftentimes in career services, we about, internship opportunity or helping students with finding maybe professionals to do things like career interviews where they can talk to somebody. And sometimes it could be a little intimidating for our students, right? Like, what if they say no? And well, if they say no, we move on, and there's going to be somebody that says yes. Because like you mentioned before, a lot of the times it flips, right? We get mentored along the way, and then somehow we become mentors. And knowing that, opportunities like a career interview or having somebody shadow you or something like that could potentially help a student is something that, as individuals evolve in their career, they would appreciate, or they would have appreciated as a student, which is oftentimes all people decide to say yes. Yeah. So I love that you say that, because I think one of the things that we often share with our students is that you have to create opportunities for yourself, right? Not everything's going to come knocking on your door or be handed in your lap. So how do you, like you say, be bold and be brave and put yourself out there and create these opportunities? Because not all jobs will be posted, not all internships will be posted online. And sometimes it's about thinking outside of the box and creating those opportunities, right? So I appreciate you sharing that, that message to our students. We're almost wrapping up on time. So I guess for our last question, or maybe it's not even a question, but if you can share like any sort of parting advice outside of what you just shared, with our audience, like what would that wisdom be that you think could help people kind of get on that path to success and leadership through their own personal journey?
Sure. Yeah, I think the last words that I'd have for you is, be true to yourself. And it sounds cliche, so let me explain. What I mean by that is find something that you enjoy to do. And I remember when I was in college, there was a lot of pressure to pick a career or a program where financially I was going to be secure. You want to pick something where you're going to make good money and you can take care of yourself. And I think that's important. That you can take care of yourself and that you can contribute to society. But I don't think it's more important than finding something that you're passionate about doing. So like if you could come to work every day and you leave at the end of the day going, wow, they actually paid me to do that. Like that is a really good deal. Like I get to do what I just did today and I got paid to do that, right? So like my grandfather told me, like if you can find something that you would do even if you didn't have to work. Like, let's say you won the lottery and what would you want to be doing even if you didn't have to actually make money? And you can find that perfect intersection where you can make a living, but you can do the things that you're passionate about. You're going to have a much happier career. You're going to have longevity will be perpetual. Versus slugging it out every day just to make the paycheck. So, and I get it, that seems ideological and it may take you a little time to get there, but I guarantee you there are going to be decisions along the way that you'll be able to make. Like, hey, do I want to stay in this high paying job that has me traveling all the time, or do I want to go do something different with my life? And one thing that I really enjoy is working with students. I love teaching. That's what brought me to the university. I love mentoring students in research and seeing light bulbs go off, figuratively. That just that just motivates me. And things like this, where we can kind of give maybe nuggets of wisdom. Maybe there's one little thing that we say today, the three of us talk about, that helps one student make a decision on what they're going to do next. Well, then it was totally worth it. And so if you can be true to yourself, and you will have opportunities, and it's not like you got to, right when you get your degree, it's like, okay, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? That's not what I mean. It's when those decision trees happen, you say, well, I could choose this or I could choose this. Make sure that you're consulting yourself and the people that are important in your life. Like if you have a spouse, or if you have family, or if you have friends, or extended family, be true to yourself as best you can to pick the decision that isn't just about making money and having a job. And I think you're going to be happier in the long run. And it'll be 10, 20, 30 years of that. And I think you'll look at it back and say, well, I'm really glad on the decisions that I made. I didn't just go after the dollar. I actually went after what I was interested in. And when I got to a point where I wasn't interested anymore, I always say, like, I'm going to do this as long as I'm having fun. And when I stop having fun, I'm going to do something else. So that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Dr. Keller. I think that is actually advice that any person along their career journey can utilize. You don't ever have to feel stuck. And that's really great. So I just want to thank you again so much, Dr. Keller, for taking time out of your busy schedule to share about your transformational journey from college to leadership. For our viewers, I hope you enjoyed today's discussion and that you'll join us this fall as we bring more leaders directly to you. Please follow us on social media as well to get the latest updates for events and career tips from GCC Career Services. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at GCC AZ Career Services or GCC Career Services on Facebook. And I will have my colleague Izell wrap it up. You're on mute.
Of course, after so much time via remote work, you would think that you would know by now, or I would know by now, but that happens still. But again, thank you so much, Dr. Keller. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to spend a lunch hour with us. With that, to our viewers, we will sign off, and we look forward to seeing everyone next semester with our leadership series. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.